June the 15th, 1996, is a day etched on the memory of many a Mancunian. What was to happen in Manchester that day not only changed the face of a great city, it also changed the course of both British and Irish history. It wasn't a normal Saturday for Manchester by any means. There wasn't a rain cloud in the sky for a start, as the city basked in the middle of a rare mini heatwave. Manchester was playing host to thousands of people from around the world for the Euro 96 football championships. And as the city filled up with fans and mums and children buying presents for Father's Day the next day, you could sense both a cosmopolitan and carnival feel about the place. This was a city enjoying itself, and certainly not one prepared for the card it was about to be dealt. That morning, Suzanne Greenhalgh was just starting her shift at Marks & Spencer.
We anticipated a really busy morning in the shop, a quieter afternoon. I had a long shift. I was just concentrating on getting through the long shift.
For Perry, Lisa and Sam Hughes, June the 15th, 1996 started out as a routine Saturday at the shops in Manchester.
We'd planned to come into Manchester on the day to get some currency for my stepdaughter, who was due to go on a trip with school.
Meanwhile, at Granada Television, security guard Gary Hall was about to receive a telephone call that would turn his and everyone else's morning upside down.
I must have taken about, 30 phone calls from members of the public asking how much is it to get on the studio tours. As soon as you put the phone down, the phone rings again. And I just picked the phone up, and this Irish voice comes on the phone, and he just explains to me that there's a bomb planted in the city centre, told me the exact location, and he told me the time it was going to go off. Then he put the phone down on me, and I just froze for a moment, and then I thought, right, I just had a gut feeling that this is a real situation. And I think within about 5 minutes, the place was swarming with police, fire brigade, ambulances, you name it. The helicopter was overhead, and they were evacuating the whole of the area.
We were heading down towards Deansgate and couldn't get really any further than, I think it's St Mary's Gate. And we decided just to bail out, to go out of the city. Didn't really think it was a threat. Didn't think that the bomb was actually going to go off. It was just there was a bomb threat, and let's get out of town. And
everybody was kind of
very calm.
It felt more like a fire drill.
Our strategy was to get people moving as fast as we could, and we co-opted anybody with a uniform. So security guards were brought into play. A level of eye contact which said, this really is serious, you'd better go.
While Lisa, Perry and Sam soaked up the sun, army bomb disposal experts were on their way to examine a white van.
About 9:30, 10 o'clock, we could see the van on the road with lots of police around it, sort of getting a lot of attention. First we thought it was just because it was illegally parked, but it seemed to go on for a while, so we were all trying to look out and see what was happening.
Well, the focus was very much in the heart of the city. The vehicle was placed very close to where Marks & Spencer's is, on the junction, essentially, of Market Street and Cross Street. We took the view very, very quickly that this had to be taken seriously.
Despite the chaos that sunny Saturday morning in Manchester, things appeared to be under control.
The police had said, yes, there was a bomb. They had it in hand and there was going to be a controlled explosion. So at that point, we knew it was quite serious.
A couple of young women came up to us and said, we've come to shop in Manchester, what's going on, what can we do? Now, believing the incident would be over very quickly, our response to them was, well, just go and have a cup of tea or coffee down the road here, or just have a walk round over the half an hour and it should be all right.
Bomb hoaxes were commonplace in Britain's cities in the 1990s, and even the security man who'd taken the original call from the IRA was caught off guard by what happened next.
The time they actually told me came along and nothing happened. I thought, oh, perhaps it was a false alarm. And just as I was sort of relaxing a little, 10 minutes later, it went off.
The bomb went off at 11:20, ripping out the heart of the centre of Manchester.
A bomb has exploded in Manchester city centre, injuring dozens of people.
Glass has been blown out over a huge area.
It's feared there could be more unexploded devices.
Police have acted very swiftly to evacuate people from all the shops and the other buildings around here.
Bomb disposal experts were examining a suspect vehicle. The blast shattered windows and could be heard for 2 miles.
There was a huge explosion. The window came in, and before we knew where we were, Sam was screaming, covered in blood. We were all covered in blood, and there was just complete panic.
The blast that rocked Manchester could be heard more than 8 miles away.
The blast went in all sorts of directions, so some people a very great distance away were blown off their feet. Others, like myself, who were much closer, didn't get the blast. It was this bizarre situation of this huge noise which stunned you, all the city being destroyed around you.
Many of the staff evacuated from their shops in the city that morning had been awaiting the all-clear at Victoria Station when the bomb went off.
Back then, people didn't have mobile phones. There was no mobile phones being passed around. So I'd moved away from where everybody was sitting in the centre of the concourse to try and phone home, waiting in the queue, and the bomb went off. And it was a phenomenal noise, really, really the loudest noise I've ever heard. The glass ceiling came in and glass showered down on everybody who was still sat underneath it. So there was pandemonium.
Hundreds of people were injured, many of them seriously, by falling glass and debris.
We are waiting an update from control. Total number of injuries, 60.
The blast blew a pregnant woman 15 feet into the air.
And I can remember turning onto Fountain Street and actually being hit with 3-4 foot deep of rubble, masonry, glass, and then seeing people just sat sort of tending their own injuries, and it was just one of disbelief.
There are now 206 confirmed casualties. There's 70 at the Manchester Royal Infirmary.
It soon became clear that we were dealing with, lots of fractures, lacerations, but you're also looking for possible sort of fatalities too.
Tonight, the devastation at the heart of a city ripped apart by one of the IRA's biggest mainland bombs. As the sun goes down, we ask, will we ever feel safe in our cities again? This is Lucy Meacott, live from Manchester City Centre for Granada Tonight.
You can see something on the news, and somehow it doesn't hit home until you see it for yourself.
We can still hear glass coming out of the windows behind us.
It was like something out of a science fiction movie. A city that's usually so busy and teeming with people, just nobody there. And the one thing that stuck in my mind forever afterwards was that the traffic lights were still going. It was extraordinary.
The bomb blast in Manchester was widely condemned by Prime Minister John Major.
I believe when the right honourable gentleman says the moment of truth is here, it is for Mr Adams and his colleagues, and everybody wishes to hear precisely what their views are. And let us have no more of the measly nonsense we've had for them in recent years.
By the Irish Premier John Bruton and by world leaders. And it soon became clear this was an IRA terrorist attack like no other.
Well, this was by far the biggest bomb that anyone had seen since the Second World War. It was absolutely staggering that a bomb could be let off in an urban area, and one really has to thank the police for evacuating the entire city centre in less than 100 minutes. Had that bomb gone off early, there would have been utter carnage.
And when you actually went down to the Royal Exchange Theatre, you found out the building had actually been lifted 2-3 inches off its roots and dropped back down. You saw the side of the Arndale Centre with gashes cut out from the side, and the bare superstructure and the ironwork twisted and welded.
It was painfully obvious even then, very early after the bomb had exploded, that the city was facing a real crisis. And the days that unfolded beyond the explosion demonstrated the scale of that crisis. Something like 40% of our shopping floor space had just been eliminated.
The political repercussions of the bomb that ripped the heart out of Manchester in 1996 were huge.
This was the IRA's last bomb in England, and it was their biggest bomb in England. It was their last hurrah. The impact was colossal, not just in Manchester, but throughout Europe. And there was huge coverage throughout Ireland and indeed throughout America. The IRA achieved its purpose. They got Sinn Féin into talks as a consequence of that bomb, because the British government knew that these the loss of city centres like this was simply not sustainable. So the sheer scale of the bomb changed the politics in terms of the Irish question.
Despite all the carnage and chaos that gripped Manchester back in June 1996, there was one city centre resident who managed to miss it all.
Thank you.
Come on, get out. He'd had a few whiskies to put himself to bed. He lived in one of the flats on top of the Arndale, or the low-level part of the Arndale complex, so he was quite close. All his windows were blown out and so forth, and we thought we'd got everybody out, and he emerged a couple of days later, feeling a bit better, but obviously his flat was in disarray.
Some clothes in there.
Still to come, from devastation to rejuvenation, how Manchester really did triumph over adversity.
There was a determination that although the IRA had ripped the material heart out of the city, there was nothing that was going to take away the character of it.
Yeah, we've got a bit of debris, we've got a bit of broken glass. We'll get back on it. We'll come back bigger and stronger.
And what next for Manchester? That's all to come as From Bomb to Boom continues. Within a week of the bomb going off in Manchester, the city's people were already planning a new future.
We called together, with the support of the Bank of England, all the major clearing banks in the city very early on in that process and said, look, we don't know what the full scale of damage is, but it's clear to us that a lot of businesses are going to be badly affected. Please give us the opportunity to work with you, work with those businesses in order to get them operational again.
There was a determination that although the IRA had ripped the material heart out of the city, there was nothing that was going to take away the character of it. That was still there and still as strong as it ever was, if not stronger.
The leader of the city council, key business leaders, Michael Heseltine as Deputy Prime Minister, who was very active and supportive of us in those early days, all very, very quickly established the principle that what we needed to do here was actually not just rebuild, what we needed to do here was actually create something that was even better.
Crucial to the rebuilding of Manchester in the days and months after that 1996 IRA bomb was the city's diverse communities, especially the Irish community.
Manchester was spared the backlash that there was in Birmingham in the 1970s when, admittedly, of course, 22 people were killed in the Birmingham pub bombings, but there was a very bitter backlash against the Irish community in Birmingham. The Irish community basically had to hide within its own communities, within its own areas. You didn't get that in Manchester because the Irish community is firstly better integrated into the city, and secondly Manchester proved what a cosmopolitan and tolerant city it was in the aftermath.
We are a melting pot for religion, class, creed, colour, and that's what gives Manchester one of its unique identifying factors. It is truly a global city. It is a world in one city.
It was Ian Simpson Architects who were tasked to come up with a vision for a new Manchester.
Previously, Manchester was always perceived as this grey town, really. I think the bomb gave the opportunity for Manchester to grasp modern architecture and new public places to help change the image of the city. We had one very, very strong vision at the time, I had, which was really to create a new street, Manchester's first new street in this century, and that was to be an extension of St Anne's Square and drive a new public place and a new street through into the old medieval quarter of the city, which housed Cheetham School, the Corn Exchange and the Cathedral. It had to be a very simple street. Unfortunately, the Sinclair pub and the Wellington were directly in line of axes, and we cranked the buildings and turned them through 90 degrees and created a new space there at the end of New Cathedral Street. And I think if you look at those pubs now, they're very, very successful and they look as though they've always been there. The bomb gave us the opportunity to sort of invest and reconfigure the city core. But what we're going to see over the next, I think, 15 years is the sort of ripple effect of the sort of the consolidation of the city core, rippling out and creating value in other areas.
Many of the new buildings that now grace the Manchester skyline are made of glass.
Good design to me is very much about light, and it's about space and a feeling of openness. And glass is a material that allows you to do that. URBIS was designed very much as a flexible gallery, and it had to be flexible in the respect that the exhibitions were always going to change, and the building needed to respond to that. It couldn't be a museum, it couldn't be an art gallery, because it was attracting Millennium funding. So the city managed to attract that funding. We built something that will be a fantastic legacy for the city.
The Hilton Tower will soon open on Manchester's Deansgate, and it's quite clear from the city's designers that size matters in the new Manchester.
The building was evolved very much to try and create a very elegant, very simple, but very elegant and slender and beautiful object. Residential, it goes up to 48 stories, and it's actually, on completion, it will be the tallest residential building in Western Europe.
Manchester has changed astronomically in the 10 years since the IRA bomb. Millions upon millions have been invested in the city centre, and every effort's been made to attract the big-name stores and businesses.
It gave the opportunity then to really enrich the retail offering that the city has. There's a lot more residential come into Manchester, and number 1 Deansgate, one of our buildings, was an important part of that.
Up till 10 years ago or so, there were still bomb sites from the war, literally empty car parks, and now one by one those bomb sites have been developed in the city centre. There are a huge number of fantastic buildings, by and large lying empty. The property industry said they'd never let. We were able to buy them very, very cheaply. They were amazing buildings, great old buildings, and we were able to renovate them and turn them into fantastic apartments, into managed workspace, into retail space, and encourage a whole load of people to come back in, to work in the city centre and to live in the city centre.
There was extraordinary vision born out of that bomb. We wanted to build a bigger city, a better city, a modern 21st century city. And once you've done that and you realise what the city had created, there was only one other thing it needed, and that was a fantastic party to celebrate our success. And therefore, that was the Commonwealth Games.
Commonwealth Games was perfect for Manchester, and it was really a great catalyst for a lot of change in the city. On the sporting side, definitely, with the new stadiums and the velodrome and everything like that. But not just that, because it gave the city a real flavour and a real kind of passion for wanting to change and having a reason to change as well.
So, 10 years on from the bomb that really did rip out the city's heart, where does Manchester sit now on the national and world stage?
Manchester's seen as a sexy city, it's seen as a music city, it's seen as an exciting city. The students are given a huge amount of heart and soul and energy and zest coming in there.
The perception of Manchester abroad is very positive. Currently at the University of Manchester they've got 180 different nationalities are represented there. There are over 7,500 students from overseas now, so it really is a proper cosmopolitan environment.
Manchester is a world city really in terms of it competing with the likes of Frankfurt and Barcelona. It's certainly the greatest city outside of London.
In Manchester you go out and you can meet all sorts of different people. In London there's tended to be one world which is the city world, one world is the media world, one world that gravitates around Mayfair, another gravitates around Hammersmith. And in Manchester, all these different worlds mix.
The financial sector here is growing. I believe there's over 60 foreign banks here now. So the economic growth really just fitted with exactly what we wanted to do. Manchester's just got one better than both New York and London. It's just friendlier and a great place to do business.
Manchester's transformation has been swift. In just 10 years, the city's rebuilt a bomb site, staged a massive sporting event, seen the creation of one of Europe's biggest universities, transformed its mainline railway station, and welcomed the Bank of New York. All that, plus millions of pounds of investment and thousands of extra jobs. So what's next?
I think globally there's always sort of a time lag to what we understand in this country, and certainly what you'd understand in any city. And I think globally the perception of Manchester is still very much the popular culture perception. And I don't think that's particularly a bad thing if it drives visitors here. One of the things we're trying hard to do at URBIS is to have exhibitions, as we did with the Super City exhibition last year, that compete on an international scale, that almost work as a sort of profile building measure. May not have huge visitor numbers, but what they're trying to do is say, no, Manchester can have events, can have exhibitions that are as good as any in Barcelona, are as good as any in Chicago.
In many ways, although people are amazed what's happened, and we've gone from a few hundred people living in the city centre to probably 10 to 20,000 at the moment, depending where you draw the ring, it's actually nothing. The population of Manchester is somewhere between 300,000 and 3 million, again, depending where you draw the red line. So we've actually got, between 1 and 10% of the population in the city centre. So I think there's much, much more to go at.
The next thing for Manchester, as I see it, is a lot of companies are now moving and basing themselves in the northwest, in Manchester. A lot of big corporate businesses. We've got the BBC moving up to Manchester with a lot of its departments soon. Media, it's going to be a media village.
And if Manchester can capitalise on what ITV Granada already brings and add to that the economic weight of the BBC, which will improve and increase our capacity to grow our independent sector, we will outclass London, without a doubt.
Whatever good or bad came out of the Manchester bomb, it's clear the events of June the 15th, 1996 have left a lasting impact on the city and its people.
We did have a life plan change. We didn't carry on with the big careers, and we've got beautiful children who are happy and confident, and really it's because of the bomb that probably happened.
I think in general the city's better. I think it was a shame for some places. I think the Royal Exchange, the independent shops that were in the Royal Exchange, they've been lost for good. And also what's now the Triangle, the old Corn Exchange. The character of that has changed. Although it's better, it makes Manchester a bit more of a cosmopolitan city. It attracts more visitors as it is. It's a shame that a lot of that was lost, really.
One doesn't really want to thank the IRA for their contribution to town planning, but the fact is that Manchester is better as a consequence of the IRA bomb. It's better physically, it looks a lot better, and it's also better, I think, in human terms, because it's a symbol of how communities can pull together in a rebuilding process.
I think the bomb kind of was a catalyst for the northern Manchester grit to come out and go, we're not going to get beaten by this, actually we're going to rise up to this challenge and change things and make our city great. And it really has done that.
Manchester is dear to my heart, and to see it devastated the way it was has left a mark on me forever.
It's hard to believe that a city as strong and big and vibrant as Manchester can be reduced to that shattered shell that it was, but then come back better than it ever was.